I just got back from returning the iPhone 14 Pro and I switched over to my previous 13 Pro. Now, even though the iPhone 14 Pro did have a couple new features that were different from my 13 Pro, the differences were just not large enough, or I guess different enough, for me to stick with the 14 Pro rather than the 13 Pro. Now, as a content creator, the main thing that I wanted to upgrade was the cameras, and seeing that it had a 48 megapixel camera, I wanted to see what it was like to take all my product photos, to take some of my reels that I do for Instagram. But when I got it in my hands, when I compared the two, the difference was honestly not really there. Now, I'm sure you've seen other videos where they show the differences between the cameras only start to show once you start going, I guess, deeper in pixel peeping. When you really zoom in really deep into the photo, you start to see the differences, which I myself saw as well. As you can see here on this cup, when you go ahead and zoom in 10x or 20x, you can see the texture on the cup itself on the iPhone 14 Pro side. 13 Pro also does a good job showing you how the cup looks, even though all of that texture and all of that detail isn't there once you zoom in. Now, again, from a content creator standpoint, this honestly doesn't bother me when you post it to Instagram or when you're trying to upload it to another site or a story. No one's really going to be pixel peeping. No one goes on Instagram and starts zooming in on every single photo to see, oh, how does this photo look? This honestly is an unrealistic way of people scrolling through Instagram. Most people that I see, they just see a photo, they like it if they think it looks good, and then they just keep on scrolling. Now, the other part of Instagram is Reels, and for that reason, I also got this phone because I do take a lot of Reels. So I wanted to see how the video camera worked, all of that slow motion or the cinematic now being able to support 24 frames per second. But honestly, the difference wasn't a big enough jump for me to leave the 13 Pro for the 14 Pro. If you see here on the cinematic footage, they both look identical. One is 30 frames per second while the other one is 24. But honestly, to the eye, you really can't tell unless, again, you're really looking for those key differences and you're really paying close attention to all of the details and all of the frames in the video. Now, they both still take ProRes video, but honestly, that's something that you aren't really going to take as a content creator because those file sizes are way too large and you're just wasting space and time editing that footage for something that's going to be compressed for Instagram. Now, another type of photography that I take a lot of is product photography. And for this, I really like having the portrait photography, or I guess the depth of field. Now, my camera does a really good job, obviously, of taking that. It has a bigger lens. It's a Canon R6. So I wanted to see what the iPhone could do from the 13 Pro over to the 14 Pro. And honestly, they both do pretty much the same. If you see in this photo of this cup, you can see that when it's a darker background and the cup is white, you still get that fringing around the edges. It doesn't really do that great with edge detection, and it does give you a little bit of that overspill onto the background. Now, when you're taking photos of people, this isn't really a big issue because whenever you take a photo of a person, usually the edge around their head is going to be hair, and no one's really going to be seeing strands of hair in a photo. And again, no one's really going to be zooming in on a photo of a person. When it comes to product photography, people are going to be looking for that edge detection, especially when you're taking macro photos and you're going to zoom in a lot. Having that poor edge detection whenever there's a high contrast between the foreground and the background is going to be a problem for me. So I said, this isn't really something that I want to upgrade to. Now, for me, those were the main driving factors as to why I was looking at the 14 Pro. There are other features on this phone that I really like, but they just weren't worth the upgrade for me. For example, the dynamic island or the notch at the top of the phone honestly made the phone feel brand new. The screen felt different. This isn't really a feature that I wanted, I guess. This is something that you gotta look at companies. They'll give you a feature and they'll push it on you. And usually you don't want it. You weren't thinking about it before, but now that you see it, it's something that makes you think, oh, that's something I really want. It worked for me with the Apple Watch Ultra, which I have a review coming up soon. But honestly, that's not really something I really needed in my everyday life. It was nice to have, but it's not worth the upgrade for me. Now, another upgrade that I think is great for those that are looking to upgrade their iPhone, which in my opinion, you should be on the 11 or before. The 12 is kind of in the iffy territory. Maybe if your phone's all beat up or you're just tired of the iPhone 12, maybe that's an upgrade for you if it's worth the money. But from the 13 and 13 Pro, I don't think you really should upgrade to the 14 or 14 Pro unless, again, you're coming from the regular 13 and you're looking at the Pro version of the 14. But the other feature is the always on display and the screen brightness. Honestly, this is something that I really enjoyed about this screen. The brightness of it was really bright. Whenever I went outdoors, it looked a lot better, and the always on display was just something that made the notch, I guess, make its place into the screen. Whenever you looked over at the phone, not only was it showing your always on display, but that notch, the pill or dynamic island, whatever you want to call it, showed a little lock screen, so you always knew that it was locked. It went ahead and changed to an unlock, or I guess the padlock came unlocked whenever you used Face ID or whenever you looked over at it, to make sure that you know the difference between having an always on display and having the screen on. Now, the always on display was something I really liked ever since my Galaxy S8. So it's something that I've always used even on my Pixel 6. But again, it's not really a feature that I'm willing to pay a few $100s for as an upgrade for my 13 Pro. After spending a whole week with the iPhone 14 Pro, I think it's a great phone, a great upgrade for anyone, again, that has anything less than a 12. But if you have a 12, again, that's in the iffy territory. If you want to spend the extra couple $100s or a few $100s, then I say go for it. The 14 Pro is honestly a great phone. I think I'm going to be waiting a whole nother year for the 15 or 15 Pro once I see a bigger jump in tech specs. Especially when it comes to the camera, I'm waiting to see exactly what next steps all these companies are taking, because as a content creator, when you're on Instagram a lot posting photos and videos, the camera on a smartphone has become so versatile where you're using that for all of your content, because obviously it's a lot easier to use your camera phone than taking out a whole DSLR or mirrorless camera. But what do you guys think about the iPhone 14 Pro? Is that something that you're upgrading to this year? Let me know down in the comments. As always, thank you guys for watching, and I will catch you on the next one.